Right. Hi, welcome back. If you're discovering this channel, my name's Chris. I teach French at We Communicate. We specialise in teaching French to speakers of English specifically, and we do this by being bilingual. If you've watched any of my videos before, well, welcome back and thank you for watching this one. Let's start. I've called this video Learning Hack. Do you see yourself speaking French? And it has to do with the human psyche and the subconscious and all such things. Now, I'm not versed in these matters and I don't have a diploma in psychology or psychiatry. But when you teach languages seriously, you find yourself in a very privileged place of observation. You meet many people and, well, you observe them. You observe their performance and you ask yourself questions about yourself as a teacher and about them, their performance. Why do some students reach this result? Why do other students reach completely different results? Why do we have high performers, lower performers, and all these things? I feel that this influence, the influence of the subconscious, is the single most meaningful one when we learn a language. And for some reason, it's the one that's the least spoken about also. Let's first talk about the human psyche in the broad strokes. It's no secret that human psychology is imperfect. In Freudian psychology, we have traumas and unresolved issues that explain our behavior. Others speak about genes or about the role of education, about nature versus nurture. I'm sure we've all heard these terms at least once. Whatever we call these influencers, the professionals of the mind all agree that we're never truly the sole captain on board when we steer our ship. Professionals usually agree that the subconscious parts of our mind has a greater influence on our actions than we usually measure. The idea I'd like to examine in this video draws from these notions of the subconscious and has more specifically to do with our self-image as learners. And the simple question is, are we quite sure that our bad results in French are due to the technique as a student? Could there be things within you that are preventing you from succeeding? Are you quite sure that a part of you isn't blocking your own progress? Each of us has an identity that is ingrained in our person and explains our choices and behaviors. We all know this. Like a simple example is the everyday experiences that take us out of our comfort zone and those that come into conflict with this identity. Why are we comfortable at the idea of doing certain things and not others? What controls this? This internal identity is our rudder. It's our compass, it's our autopilot. It's the thing that keeps us consistent with who we are. It keeps us consistent so that we can go on with our lives and don't have to think about it. We don't have to stop at every step and say, wait, is this really me doing this? Especially in the context of doing something radically new, such as learning French in this case, I think it's worth asking ourselves what our self-image thinks about this decision and how far it will allow us to go as learners of French. Far from being a hindrance, this self-image or identity is a natural regulator that keeps us on course and maintains consistency. That's its role, it's to maintain consistency. And some compare it to the self-correcting airplane that's constantly pushed off course by the winds and has to put itself back on course to reach its destination. That's what the subconscious does. So it's what your subconscious considers to be you, your identity, and that it maintains throughout all our actions. Now we see this in school also. A child who gets bad grades in school will often identify with this self-image and might not see themselves being top of the class. There would be a contradiction with their image if they got good grades. So would it not make sense that the subconscious block good school results from happening if it's the job of the subconscious to maintain consistency? And why does it happen? Because the subconscious doesn't think. It just obeys. You know, close to me in my family, I've had people who regularly promised to never eat again and even buy memberships at the gym. But part of me, the emotional part of me, wishes that their resolutions stay strong and that it bring them success. But at the bottom of me, I know it won't happen. And it's horrible to say so, but I know it won't happen. They will continue with their old eating habits and repeat the same promise the next time they find themselves fat, because you just can't cheat the subconscious. You can't cheat your self-image. If you don't identify with having a six-pack or being fit or going to the gym, if it's not part of your identity, the subconscious will temporarily allow it, but quickly get back to eating I don't know, whatever makes a person unhealthy. I quit smoking years ago, that was over 10 years ago, and I experienced it myself. My being, my identity had accepted smoking as being part of me, and when I quit smoking it felt very strange. It wasn't a rational thing, but I felt there was something missing from my identity because I wasn't a smoker anymore. And I think that's the hardest part in smoking. So you almost have to reprogram yourself as a non-smoker and somehow find this new identity, because as long as your identity is linked to being a smoker, it's going to be very hard to not smoke. So in a sense, I shifted my identity, and I can now happily rub my victory in other smokers' faces because I did it and they didn't. But you have to visualize the benefit. I think, in my opinion, if you don't visualize the benefits, if you can't convince yourself why it's worth it, it will be a lot harder for it to work. The reason for all of this has nothing to do with the willpower. It has nothing to do with the conscious side of our person, because this is only surface deep. It has to do with our identity as people. I think unhealthy people, not to call them overweight, I think rather identify with, I don't know, hanging out or eating a certain type of food and maybe watching television, but they might not agree with using a skipping rope, which might take them outside of their comfort zone. They just don't identify with it. The subconscious can be really perverse and act against us. And I think this is why we see more and more people on the internet work daily to change the aspects of their programming, you can call it your programming, that they don't like, and they do this by repeating messages and writing down their thoughts, because they might see, okay, I'm getting these results, I don't want these results, I want different results. How can I correct the sort of internal computer, the compass that's directing me towards these results? Consciously, I'm not happy with the results, I want different results, but what's preventing them from happening? And we have to look towards the subconscious for this. So what does all this have to do with learning French? Allow me to explain. In my French classes, I see that it's exactly the same logic. The students who do well are those who see themselves do well in French in the months to come. And they fully accept their success as students, and they open the mental gates towards learning, for the learning to happen. It's a question of visualizing. In my functions as a French tutor, I consider it one of my first responsibilities to plant the seed of success in the minds of the students. And I do so honestly because I believe everyone's capable of succeeding, but I am sometimes met with opposition, and this is the subconscious barrier. When we start French as students, I think it's well worth asking ourselves how good we see ourselves getting in French. Like, do we see each other fully conversational and blasting through the learning program at We Communicate? Is this our vision for ourselves? Or do we rather see ourselves starting French, or participating in French and being involved in French, or trying our best and seeing what happens? These are very different decisions, and they all lead to very different outcomes. It's worth remembering, I think, that no one ever did something great in life by accident. There was a lot of focusing involved and seeing the victory happen. If you listen to any sports personality, anyone who's achieved unusual success in life, they all visualized it's a huge part of our success, which is why it's particularly worth asking ourselves before we start French, well, what do I really see happening? How successful do I see myself in the future now that I am learning French? Do I really see myself conversational? Do I see myself like the best, fully conversational and fluent? Or is my vision, my realistic belief in my success, do I see myself being involved in French? Do I see myself being involved in French? The way I say it, I always say there's a big difference between learning French and having learned French. What are you really doing? Do you see yourself having learned French, with it behind you, or involved in the process? These are very, very different decisions. And you can check for yourself, because it's true for small things and for big things. When we go to the supermarket, we see ourselves coming home with the groceries. We see this victory happen. And it seems self-evident, but it's the way it works. we don't see any reasonable obstacle ever happen, and no one says, well, you know what, I need to do the shopping today. Well, listen, I'll walk up to the front door and see how that goes, and then I'll try to get a trolley, and then well, I hope to be able to get food off the shelves, but listen, if I lose faith, I'll just turn back and go home again. Doesn't happen, does it? You see the victory happen. I have a pen here in front of me. I see myself grab this pen and use it. I'm not saying, oh, a pen. I think I'll use this hand, I think. Well, I'm going to raise my hand. I'm sort of going to stretch out. Of course not. I see the thing happening. I have complete faith that the action is going to happen. In language learning, it's the same thing. Do we see ourselves as someone who encounters modest victories in our life? And it's worth thinking about, because if this is our background, well, it's worth thinking how it's going to influence our learning of French. Will it hinder a big and beautiful victory such as speaking French? Will there be a contradiction with our self-image? And it's almost a matter of conditioning, or like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's really worth thinking of ourselves as learners and examining ourselves as future users of French. How far do I expect to go? In terms of practical advice now, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, of course not, but I would encourage every student of French to think of how much they truly believe in their success. Do you see yourself speaking French fluently with someone? Is that when you close your eyes, do you see this thing happening? Or do you see yourself sitting down at your desk ready to do the exercises? In case of a no to any of these questions, well, the question of your success in French sort of answers itself fast. The subconscious identity will do its utmost to guide you towards behaviors that are sure not to work, I want to say, such as finding an easy language learning app. All this is subconscious, people who are directed towards these easy language apps. It's not an accident. These are subconscious decisions, I'm sure of it. Or, for example, never finding a moment to do a bit of serious language work at a table with a pen and paper just because it contradicts a self-image. There is a degree of self-sabotage involved that we can blame on the subconscious, and it's horrible to say, but it's true. Let's talk about the way forward and the solutions, if there are any. Once more, I'm not a qualified psychiatrist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a teacher who's observed many learners, and this is what I think. I think the first possible solution that I would offer is, well, to realize consciously that in anything we do, there's much more than the conscious part of our decisions. It's important to know this. Learning a language is a pretty big shift in identity if you think about it, because it involves victories, failures, overcoming disappointments, struggles, and stepping out of a comfortable monolingual one-language interpretation of the world, and so many others. It's a shift in identity. It's no small thing. It's really worth asking ourselves, well, how much is my self-image, how much is my subconscious going to block my results? If we look at this on the level of school, the specialists in education know that a language class has more than 2 participants in it. I think that too many learners, and parents especially, simplify the process by believing that the teacher will place the knowledge in the mind of the learner, whose only job is to attend the class, as if there was a sort of a magical transfer of knowledge. The teacher speaks, the student learns. That there's more participants in the process than just teacher and learner, as well as the physical variables that are involved in the learning, such as the classroom, the type of classroom, the location, the type of learning support. Well, there are also determining factors such as the work a student feels comfortable putting in, and the result they're comfortable in getting. How the student approaches the learning determines the outcome. As a professional teacher myself, based on countless students I've met, if the student doesn't see their future success as users of French, it's already a good indication, very sadly, of the future results to come. It all depends if the identity of the self is in tune with being a good learner of French. Just as Superman can't do any harm or get drunk, and LeBron James can't be anything else than great, no student can be good at French whose subconscious identity doesn't agree with this achievement. The subconscious will do everything it can to get us back on course towards what it thinks we're supposed to be. And that was the article. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope it was useful. I want to add a few comments and speak about one student in particular whose name is Sophie. She's American. I met her when she was 9 or 10 years old, and it's been a few years now, but I never forgot her because she is absolutely the best student I have ever seen. She is what her parents described her to me as being intelligent, over average, above average intelligent, and she was a very intelligent student, and I taught her French for close to 2 years. What impressed me most about Sophie, and what I would say was the main reason of her success as a learner, is that Sophie saw no reasonable obstacle to being able to plough through any exercise I put in front of her. And it had to do with her self-image. It had to do with the limits that she didn't impose on herself. I could show the exact same exercise to an adult, like for example a PDF that was 8 pages long. If I gave Sophie a PDF of 8 pages, well, she had already accepted the idea that she was going to get through it within 60 minutes. I could teach her the conditional in French in one lesson. Here's the job, Sophie. We're looking at this today. All right, that's what we're going to learn. But another adult, they would get halfway through the first page. But why is this? It has to do with identity. The adult has sort of already blocked the results from happening. And it's all very relative. It doesn't depend on anything much, really, when you think about it. Why couldn't you learn the present tense? I always say, go to my website. I have a 40-class plan to teach you French, or 43, I think, more exactly. But why wouldn't it work? Well, the main obstacle is, because I don't think it's going to work, because surely it can't work, right? A person would say, the present tense, how many 30 verbs? I need at least 3 months to learn that. Well, not really. You could do it in a week. Present tense, I have 4 PDFs, and the 5th one is a revision of the present tense. Bang, there you go, present tense in French in a week. What are the real factual reasons that prevent this from happening? Well, it has to do with identity, most probably. I've never done anything like this in my life before. What makes me believe that I can do it? It seems a bit foreign. It seems a bit too different from how I see myself, on a subconscious level. And little Sophie, she didn't have this issue, and this is why she was so brilliant. It was almost like a blank slate, tabula rasa, blank slate. Give any exercise you want to Sophie, she'll just plough through it, and that's she didn't have an obstacle, because she viewed herself, probably, she was very young, but she probably viewed herself as someone who didn't see any reasonable obstacles to her learning anything she wanted. I see this with other young learners also, which is partly why I don't teach kids anymore, because I've written about the effects of school before. I think when young people come into a language class with me, when they start learning French with me, in a sense they're so conditioned regarding the results they allow themselves to reach that it's almost blocked before they start. And it's horrible to say so. But, first of all, I see them mimic the behaviour that they have in school. So, they're more in a passive role. They just show up to the class and wait for things to happen. So I don't do that anymore. Sorry to say, I just work with adults now. For that reason, just because they're conditioned by a certain school behaviour, which I think is not ideal for good learning results to happen. But also they've been conditioned in such a way that they would have no reason to believe that I can make them fluent in French in less than a year if school can't do it in 4 years. They probably already have taken 4 years of Spanish. School still hasn't made them fluent in Spanish, so that they would have no reason to believe that I can do it in less time. And of course it has to do with their self-image as learners. These are the results I usually get in school. Why all of a sudden would I be up there? Why all of a sudden would I be, conversationally able in French in under a year? Why would I believe that it would ever happen? And the little dig I took about language learning apps in this video here, which I'll continue doing because I find it laughable, all these language learning apps. The thing is, for me, it's, the first thing isn't so funny because there is a subconscious behaviour that makes a person relate to a language learning app. They identify with a user of such an app. So in a sense, the result is already predetermined. You can see that it's in so many facets of life. And I think everyone can self-examine the truth of what I just said, because I might come across as being very judgmental or cruel even, but at the core of yourself, I've used Duolingo, I'm not ashamed to say it, but how much do you really believe that Duolingo is going to bring you a new language? Okay? Do you believe that at your core, or is it possible that there is also a degree of self-sabotage involved? And then we can ask ourselves the question, well, why am I self-sabotaging? Is it in line with my self-image? Right? Take the example of a super successful, I don't know, anyone, celebrity, business person, artist, anyone that you visualize who's achieved unusual results and who might be very well known. Do you think they would use a language learning app? Why or why not? Do you think they would say, oh, this is free, I think I'll go with this because this is what's brought me to my success. It's by using free apps. Well, no, evidently not. I mean, their compass will bring them to other choices. And it all acts on a subconscious level. And I'm not looking down with disdain on anyone who uses language learning apps, because that's not the point of this video. But it's worth asking. I mean, we can use each other and look at other people's success and say, well, if they were in my shoes, would they be doing that? Yes or no? And if you see the successful person of your choice, however you define success, would they be using a cheap, free app? Yes or no? And why not? Or maybe because their subconscious is tuned to success and results, and they wouldn't even see it. It wouldn't even be on their radar. They wouldn't even notice it. They'd look at it and say, oh, a free thing. Oh, yeah, right, funny. Okay, where's the expensive classes that will get me somewhere? Well, it's not only about money, but you see what I mean. They'll just choose different things. A second thing I wanted to say about apps, because I like to take little digs at them. The funny thing is, why I called them in another video, you know, charlatans, and what did I call them, witch doctors and all that. Some people didn't agree with the terms I used, but it's funny to me because as a professional teacher, I'm seeing all these psychological variables that come into play when you teach a language, because it's a highly psychological task. There's a bit of an identity shift happening, you know, because language is success. But then could this contradict your self-image? You know, imagine all of a sudden you spoke 4 languages, you'd be a different person. Fluent in 4 languages, wow, that's a level of success that, ooh, you know, is that in tune with the rest of my life sort of thing, right? And the funny thing with these apps and all these learning programs is if you compare it to a stream, well, they're downstream, you know, giving you all the little tools, you know, learn here. But what's happening upstream? Well, what's happening upstream is what guides you subconsciously. So it has nothing to do. So wherever you go downstream, well, it will still be controlled by your subconscious. So you can have, if you compare it to a sports club, you can have the best equipment in the world, but if upstream your subconscious is already telling you that you will not get fit and you will not work out like a champion, or you're not even going to change much about your appearance, well, it's certainly not going to work. And all the developers of language apps completely fail to see the subconscious, the psychological factor, which is also incidentally why it's so important to work with a human teacher. Okay, that was it for my language hack. Do you see yourself speaking French, or the psychological sides of learning French? I'll be making more videos on this because there's much more to say. Feel free to comment. I always look forward to your comments. Tell me how right you think I am. Tell me how wrong you think I am. And thanks for watching. See you soon. I'm Chris from We Communicate. Bye.